Hello and welcome to another episode of the Accountant Success Secrets podcast. I'm Philippa Haynes of Insight 101.
And I'm Mark Lee of Bookmark Lee.
Through our podcast, we aim to showcase and celebrate successful accountants who have been running their own practice for a good few years and who we think can inspire and encourage other accountants in practice around the UK.
We ask them to share their stories, including the highs, the lows, and what they've learned along the way. Our aim is to provide some fundamental insights for you, our loyal listener, all within 30 minutes or so. If you'd like to share your story in a similar way, do please get in touch with Philippa or me.
Okay, so today's podcast is sponsored by Pinnacle, a trusted outsourcing partner with over 100 clients in the UK and Ireland. Pinnacle CEO Mayank Pandya is a chartered accountant based in London, and he has a passion to encourage innovation and excellence in the accounting profession. Pinnacle has offices in the UK and offshore delivery centres across India, employing over 250 high-quality staff. With a strong focus on quality assurance, Pinnacle has helped many UK accounting firms to scale their capacity and operations. So to find out more, please visit www.pinnacleoss.co.uk. You'll also find the link online wherever you're listening to this podcast.
Thank you. Well, today we are delighted to introduce Tom McManners, technology permitting, who established his firm Treetops Chartered Accountants at the turn of the century. It was a previous podcast guest, Lorraine Ellison, from episode 3 in August 2023, who recommended that we interview Tom. Over the last 24 years, he's grown the practice so that it now has 2 offices and now employs around 30 staff, one in across the 2 offices, one in Farnborough and one in Milton Keynes. The firm provides a full range of accounting and audit-related services. There's also amassed over 340 5-star reviews on Google, which is very impressive.
Okay, I think this may be the first auditor we've interviewed on the podcast, so welcome, Tom. Is there anything else you'd like to add by way of intro? Have we missed anything?
I think it keeps growing. I think we're nearly up to 40 people now. And in fact, we've got 2 people who I've never met, which is really odd. Employing people but I mean, for Jeff Bezos, he has thousands, but when you have one employee and you could pass them in the street, it becomes very strange, really.
Brilliant.
I'm sure more about that.
Yeah. Okay. As you know, we aim to keep the podcast to around 30 minutes, and we do that by focusing the discussion around a few key questions. And Mark, do you want to kick off?
Yeah. So we'll start with a combination. How did you get into accounting, and and particularly what attracted you to start your own practice? And how did you go about doing that, if you can remember?
Well, yeah, it's a bit of a long story. I'll try to be brief.
We like long stories.
I graduated in civil engineering, and I had a training contract to become a chartered engineer. I was 95% of the way through that and working at Guildford University building the Performing Arts Centre. I was in the bottom of a trench when it collapsed, and fortunately it collapsed at the other end. There's a foot of water in the trench, and of course the tidal wave comes towards you. I'm soaking wet, and so I toddled off into the Students' Union at Guildford University to change my wellies and my socks and dry my bits and pieces out while I had a pie and a pint for lunch. And whilst I was sitting there feeling sorry for myself, I was reading a copy of Graduate Post, which basically said, do something exciting, become an accountant. Yeah. And I thought, I won't die at work. And it'll be 9 till 5:30. So I wrote off to the Institute, got a booklet from them, wrote to a dozen local firms, had a few interviews, and 3 years later I was a chartered accountant instead of a chartered engineer, really. So that's how that happened.
That's awesome. Was that with a large firm or a local firm?
Well, I was at Guildford, so clearly my accent isn't from Guildford. But when you join a firm of civil engineers, you build something somewhere. I built a seawall in Bexhill-on-Sea, your next job could be anywhere. So the next job was in Horsham building a supermarket. Then suddenly I'm in Guildford, but it could have been in Newcastle. And I repaired the runways at Manchester Airport.
Oh,
So
wow.
you get all over the country, and so I happened to be in Guildford at the time, and so I just applied for local firms really, and ended up in Dorking, training with like a 4-partner practice with maybe 20 staff in Dorking as one of the new trainees really.
And where did the idea come from to start your own practice then, and how did you do that?
Okay, so after I sort of qualified, then I did various jobs. I moved down the high street and became an audit manager for another firm, and then once I'd done 5-year apprenticeship and had my practicing certificate, I got a job working as a finance director for a small company, then left there and became a CEO of a division of a big company, then left there and was group finance director of an international company. And then I realized that you couldn't get any higher unless you were going to be, on working for a PLC. And the last job I had before starting this, I didn't quite get on with the way they did things. So I basically jumped off there and thought, I'll find another job. I don't like this one. And whilst I was looking to find another job, I was bored. Someone said, can you do my tax return? So I did. Then I did another one and another one. So I suppose technically I'm still looking for my next job. I'm just filling in a lot of tax returns along the way, really.
Awesome.
Yeah. And what have you learned then as you've gone through? So obviously you're still looking for your second or third job, whatever, but in that time you've sort of set up your practice, and what have the differences been then, and what have you learned in that time?
Well,
big question, I know.
Lots of different people I suppose are watching this, but at the start, I'd handed my notice in and I'd left. I'm looking for a job, and in the meantime you fill a few tax returns and you do a few bits and pieces, and then suddenly you think, hang on a minute, if I get a few more clients here, do I really actually have to go and work for someone else, or can I actually make enough money to pay the bills out of doing this? How can I do this? And the answer is find some more customers. So if I can find some more customers and they can pay me, I can just sit at home in my study, do these tax returns, and I'll have enough money to pay my bills, and I won't have to commute to London or whatever, or work for someone else. And so my whole focus from the very beginning was, where can I find the next customer from?
Where did you find?
And that was it, really. So every moment of the day is, what can I do to bring in another customer? If you're at the railway station and there's a new cafe, you go in and buy a cup of coffee and say to the person behind the counter, oh, nice new cafe, is it yours? Oh, yes, it is. Oh, are you the boss? Have you got an accountant? Oh, no, I haven't. Here's a card. And everywhere you go all the time, work never stops, and you're constantly I was constantly trying to find new customers, and basically I've just done that for the last 20 years, and like we've got 2,500 now. So,
and how have you actually developed that approach, and have you sort of refined who you sort of pick up along the way? Because obviously when you're looking initially, you sort of take on anything and everything, don't you? But I suspect after 20 years and with so many employees and doing so well, you've probably become quite sophisticated, I would imagine.
Well, times change, really. I mean, at the start, in the beginning, what I did was I put adverts in the local papers, and people would ring me up, and they'd say, at all sorts of places, you'd be on a training course, doing some CPD. The phone would ring in your pocket. You'd leave the CPD to sign up a customer because you had to do it. I signed somebody up on a ski lift. I got on the ski lift. The phone rang in my pocket. I thought, oh, it's 10 minutes to get to the top. I took my phone out of my pocket. I've got a really blue hand. I'm talking to somebody on the lift, and I went down the dip. I think I'm going to go in a black hole at the minute, I said. Well, white hole, really. By the time I got to the top, as we get to the end of the lift, I went, okay, thanks very much. Right. Click, and then the conversation was over. So, yeah, it never stopped on holiday. It just became, like the other half said, you have to not be at work sometimes, but okay, not be at work for doing the accounts and the tax returns, but you always felt I had to be there to bring in the customers. So, but the adverts in the local papers really stopped, really, when, because, it was a long time ago, and then the internet came along, and then suddenly, there was me and someone I knew set up a website to attract, it was set up called Accounting Brokers, and we set that up, and so it was almost like we were almost the first people on the internet, and you were getting customers from all over the countryside before everybody got onto the bandwagon. So if you find something that's innovative and new, and you can be the first one there, you get a lot of customers. So that the internet really changed things, really, and then now really I think everybody just needs a good website and some good SEO, and that brings it in. And at the same time, as your company and as your business gets bigger, you get more recommendations. You get the guy who you signed up a long time ago for just some dormant accounts suddenly gets a job as a CEO somewhere, and he gives you the accounts for that company there, and then his brother needs some accounts doing, and then his brother's friend in the structural engineers needs it doing, and then suddenly the boss of the firm of structural engineers says, how can you do all my staff's accounts except mine? Then you get the structural engineers accounts, then you get his sisters, and it's almost like a family tree of who's recommended you. So half the clients come in through recommendations, and half of them are basically new ones that come in from the website these days, and then maybe 10% of me wandering around still doing what I always did of talking to people and saying, so I play football a couple of times a week, and then the guys find out you're an accountant, they ask you half a dozen questions, and then they go, oh, my other accountant didn't tell me that. And usually at that point, you've really got them, really. So
I love it.
But basically, their other accountant didn't tell them because they didn't ask. And they haven't just had their ears bent for an hour by me in the pub.
I get it. And at what point do you ask, because with over 340 5-star reviews on Google, at what point do you or your team ask for a Google review? And how easy do you make it for clients to give them to you?
Well, I'm not sure if I should give that trade secret away, really, but as it's you and just this one, what happened was that somebody put on a really bad Google review, like this is a rubbish firm, right? And we hadn't done anything wrong. We'd done this lady's tax return, and it was all done nicely. And she didn't like the fact that she didn't have any tax to pay, and she thought she should have some. It was the most bizarre conversation I've ever had. Anyway, I said, no, this is done right. It's the way you do it. Anyway, she didn't like it, so she left some complaint. Someone said, hey, you've got a complaint on there. I tried from Google to remove it because it was unfair, really. And then the Google just won't speak to you, really. If you ever get a complaint, I wouldn't bother. And then you think about legal action and stuff like that, and then you think, no, I can't be bothered. So I thought, well, if I've got one bad review, I should have some good reviews. So then you ring up half a dozen, 10 clients and say, can you put a good review on? So then that way there's 10 good ones and one bad one. And then the SEO guy said, if you've got more good reviews, you'll get more customers. Have I thought. So then what we did was at the bottom of the email block, just before it says kind regards, yours sincerely, it says, have you got a moment spare? If so, please can you leave us a Google review? It'll help us out. And then every member of the team has that on the bottom of their email block. So every email that goes out the building asks everybody all the time to put a Google review on. And now there's 340 Google reviews and one bad one. Everybody's going to go on now and look at the bad one. I can feel it in my bones.
You dealt with it really well. And as you say, I mean, with over 340 5-star reviews, that one, it was over a year ago, and it stands out as being clearly is their fault, not your. Oh, it's ridiculous. But yeah, thank you for your openness and honesty there, Tom. Really appreciate that. I'm sure our listener does too.
Yeah, I mean, what's coming through to me is that you're a great communicator, really, and you think really well on your feet as well. But you've also, it sounds to me like you started things early. So most people say, oh, I was the first to use Xero or something, cloud accounting. But actually, you know, you go way back and sort of, you know, at the start of the internet, you were sort of getting involved. So, I mean, obviously, there's a lot to your success, I think.
When did you start growing the team to get to sort of 30 or 40 people that you've got now? How did that develop?
Sorry, you cut out a little bit there. What was the question?
How did you grow the team? What was
okay.
What prompted the growth?
How did the team grow? Well, I was, when you start off, you're working from home, and then you're working from home and there's just you. Then you're working from home and then I thought, I need someone to help. Well, actually, I had a perfect assistant to start with, because if you remember, at some point in my career, I stepped off a building site and trained to be an accountant. As I entered the accountancy world, they send you to BPP to do your professional studying.
Yeah,
I walked into one of the classrooms at BPP, and I thought, I'm going to be in this classroom for 6 weeks. Where shall I sit? Who shall I sit next to? Who looks like he's a nice chap to sit next to? And I walked to the front of the classroom, looked around, and thought, oh, I think I'll sit there. So I went across and said to this young lady, excuse me, is anyone sitting here? She said, no. And as I went to sit down, she said, but you can't. I said, well, okay, then I'm going to sit across the aisle from you and annoy you for the next 6 weeks, which I did. And I've been annoying her for the last 35 years now. So,
oh, lovely.
So we basically sat through that BPP course, and then we did all the exams through together. We were both practicing accountants, and we both qualified. And so when Treetops started, while I was busy out and about finding new customers, there's only so many hours in the day. If I happen to say to the other half, by the way, is there any chance you can fill this tax return in? I didn't really have to show how to do it, if you know what I mean. Yeah. So if you want to know who the real boss is,
it's always the case, Tom. Always the case.
But we sort of complement each other's skills, really. I'm the sort of the big, loud, noisy, chatty one who brings in the clients, and she basically says, "Don't put me in front of clients. I don't want to have anything to do with them. My technical knowledge isn't good enough. I'll organise all the work. I'll make sure all the team are busy. I'll make sure we're up with GDPR, that we satisfy the institute's requirements." So she basically runs the place, really, and I just wander around meeting interesting people like Mark and having a bit of fun.
So at some point, then she must have given up her job.
Yeah. So I mean, we both trained together. We did that. We went backpacking around the world for 6 months after we both qualified as a little treat for doing that. When we came back, we both got different jobs, and then we did that, and then he decided one to near where it wasn't so far for me. So she'd given up she'd given up my main job, and she was looking after the children. So yeah, she could work, when the kids were at school between 9 and 3, and basically
this is Cathy.
helped me out all along the way, really. And now that the children have grown up and left, I think she works Monday and Thursday and Friday afternoon or something, because she says she's partially retired, and so.
Okay.
10 staff.
Yeah.
So she was the first employee, really. Then after that, we were getting busier and busier, the two of us, and you're at the school gate dropping the kids off, and she was talking to one of the other mums who says she worked in the corner shop, but she used to run payrolls in the payroll bureau. And you go, well, what are you working in the corner shop for? She goes, well, because it's a nice, easy job, and I'm just a mum. And we went, well, do you want to come and work with us? And so suddenly there was me and her in our house and then Debbie came, and there was 3 of us sat in the study. Then there were 3 of us in the study and 2 people in the spare room. Then the house next door was for sale, and I bought the house next door, and then there were 4 of us in the house next door. Then there were 6 of us in the house next door, and 3 people in my study. And then we moved out to the house next door. I sealed it all off and merged the gardens. It was like I had a cottage in the garden, really. And then we moved out of that, and the local firm of lawyers on the high street were basically, they were retiring, and their office was up for hire. So we moved into the local office on the high street where the lawyers were. And I think there was like 10 of us at the time. And the office fit like 30 people. But we just filled them in and hired some rooms out, and bit by bit hired more and more people as we got busier and busier. That's why there's a huge library behind me. The lawyers left all their legal library behind me. So if you ever pop in the office, I'm sat in the legal library, because it's the old senior partner's office. So I'm sat around the meeting table and that.
Is this in Farnborough, Tom?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Okay. So how come where did the office in Milton Keynes come from then?
You got all my stories are like, they've got like twists in them, really. So when there was about 5 or 6 of us, it was Christmas, and Cathy, her sister, came down for Christmas, and they brought the kids, and it was a big family reunion. And my sort of nephew Zach, who was 18, worked as a gardener, and basically said, I don't like being a gardener because when it rains, they tell me I can't come to work and I don't get paid. And I'm going, well, what about employment status? And he goes, well, I'm self-employed. And I go, oh, I'll do your tax return. Anyway, besides that, he didn't like being a gardener. He said, can I be an accountant like you? I went, you live in Leighton Buzzard, mate. I'm in Farnborough. It's an hour and a half's journey away. Not if I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and drive down there and start at 7. I can do it in 45 minutes, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, Zach we said, okay, Zach, you can be an apprentice if you want. So Zach got a job as an apprentice, and for the next 3 or 4 years commuted every day from Leighton Buzzard. And after a couple of years, he went home, and his sister, who was just graduated and qualified as a teacher and was teaching people, he used to go home and tell his sister how wonderful it was being an accountant. So at the next Christmas party we had, his sister said, can I be an accountant as well? We went, okay. So we had the nephew and the niece commuting from Leighton Buzzard to Farnborough every day, so that they could both be accountants. Took it turns driving and things like that. And then over the years, they both qualified. So they were both qualified accountants and commuting to Farnborough every day, which is a long way. Then the pandemic came. And of course, then everybody suddenly was working remotely from home with VPNs and stuff like that. And so they were working from home. And when COVID was over, do I really have to drive all the way back to Farnborough? Because it's a long commute and I can do my work from home. And I thought, I can't have you two sitting at home in the cupboard under the stairs for the next 20 years. That's no way to have a job. There's no life in that. So I said, well, why don't you go out and find a local office, and you two can have a little office and get 4 desks or 3 desks and get an assistant between you. So, of course, they went out there, and about, 18 months ago, well, just when COVID ended, really, so whenever that was, 2 or 3 years ago, took them like a couple of months to find an office and things like that. Opened up their little office in the same building as KPMG. So sometimes the customers look at KPMG and look at us and come in and say, oh, sorry, more reasonable rates. Basically opened a little office up, hired an assistant, and now it's grown and grown a bit. And now there's those 2 in there, and they've got 3 assistants. So there's 5 people in there. And they basically feed off our client base. It's almost like they're in the room next door, like that.
Nice.
But they've signed up their own clients since there. And in fact, one of them sent me an email today saying, we've just signed up our, whatever it was, 87th client, and the fees generated since we started the £50,000.
So tell me,
fees alone.
So tell me, Tom, there have been a lot of twists and turns using your language. One of the questions we usually ask is, what mistakes have you made? And I'm sure there's a song to that. You've made a few, but seriously, I'm sure with all of that sort of evolving, etc., there've been a few kind of moments of kind of, oh God, shouldn't have done that. Anything in particular that you can remember that you kind of think, oh, we could have done that better?
I think right at the beginning, instead of being a chartered accountant, I should have applied to Deutsche Bank or UBS and gone into I'll be sitting on the Caribbean island now. No, but on the mistakes along the way, I probably shouldn't have. When I was in practice, I wanted to run things, and so I joined the company as the FD. Then it would help me run things, and then I was a CEO. I've always wanted to be the boss of something, but all those years ago, right at the start, I shouldn't have gone and got a job and gone, the next logical step is to move from practice into industry being FD. I should have moved from practice into running my own practice. I shouldn't have done the industry part. Although the other half says it taught me a few things about
I bet it did.
Bits and bobs along the way, and no experience is wasted really. And you know, there's a whole podcast in some of those adventures I had there alone. So yeah, I should if I'd started sooner, it would have been better. But you know, is your glass half full or is your glass half empty? You know, we're just, you know, it's
Tom.
There's like 40 people. There's 2,500 clients, and really, to be honest, these days I sort of come to work for fun. Really, you know, I organise my life around. Oh, someone's asked me to play golf, I'll go. Someone's asked me to play football, I'll go. Or someone wants me to walk around the park, I'll go. And when I haven't got anything to do, I'll come to work, and then I'll do some. And I'll just work is the things that I do when I'm not having fun, really, because the thing is big enough to do that. And you know, and what a great place to find yourself. Mind you, it took 25 years of, you know, my record was 117 hours in 1 week. You know, so you know, I have put some time into it. But
Tom, I'm sorry to interrupt. I've got to say, that answer to what mistakes have you made? That's that was a fantastic answer. All of your stories have been amazing, but that's sort of the classic answer that you get in an interview when you ask somebody for your biggest mistake, and they give you your biggest weakness, and they give you a weakness that's actually a strength. And you know, the mistake you made, yes, but look at everything, all the benefits that have flowed from that. So was it really a mistake? It's great example, I think. Great example.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like I say, I could have started sooner. That would have been that. Then the company would be bigger. But even if it was bigger, well, I mean, how much is enough sometimes, really? You know, the other half says, you know, why are you doing this? And you go, because I like playing Monopoly. What do you mean? Well, I like going around the board. I was always, you know, when I was a kid, I just like playing board games. And running a business is like playing a board game. It's like playing Monopoly. The best training you can get for running the firm of Chartered Accountants is to play Monopoly. You go round and round the board and try not to go bankrupt. And if you go around enough times, you get enough £200, and try not to land on the one which says pay a tax.
Yeah. So what do you think how would your clients describe kind of being clients with you guys at Treetops? You know, what's unique about it, apart from the fact, you know, you're obviously very unique anyway and quite a character, which is always brilliant. But what do you think it is that gets people to stay with you, do you think?
Well, I think when they initially turn up, I've not worn a suit all my life, really, because, you know, starting off working from home, it was a bit weird putting your suit on, sitting in your own house. And then when we had an office, I put a suit on once, and someone came in and said, "What you put the suit on for?" You know, because I'm used to seeing you in your t-shirt, so I didn't do that. But the point is, these people come in and they look at you and they don't know what to expect. And you know, I've got the wrong accent for this part of the country. And you sit down, and what happens is you say, right, what you're doing, and then you explain to them, well, if you do it this way, you'll save some tax, and if you do it this way, it'll be a bit easier for you, and if you do it this way, things will run a bit smoother. And all of a sudden, you can see the look on their face from I'm not quite sure about this strange northern bloke who I'm talking to, sitting in his t-shirt. Well, it has got a logo on it, so it is tax deductible. So
it looks good.
Thank you. So, and you know, and then the clients come in and go, "Oh, are my clothes tax deductible?" No, they're not. Unless you get the company logo put on it, then it is. Except it costs you more to get the logo put on it than what you save in tax. So maybe that's a false economy. But if you explain to the clients how they save some tax and how they can do things better, they go out the room with happier than when they came in. And I've got a buddy who's a sales director, and he said, it doesn't matter what your job you do. He said, you're not selling accounting, you're not selling magnets, you're not selling tables and chairs. He said, you're selling happiness. When a client comes into the room, he's all confused and lost. When he leaves, he wants to leave with a smile on his face. And if he does that, he'll remember what you told him. And then you do that, and you explain to them all, and they say, oh, my accountant's not proactive. So I say to them, yeah, I'm not proactive. I said, because if I ring you up every Friday and ask you how you're getting on, you think I'm stalking you. So I said, I'm here, and what we'll do is we'll send you out the budget summary when you change the budgets. We'll remind you when your accounts are due. If anything big changes in the world, like IFRS 16 is going to be introduced over at the top of FRS 1 or 2, and we know you've got leases, we'll tell you about that. And then that way, you'll be on top of it. But I'm not going to ring you up every Friday and have a chat with you. But however, I'm like the Coast Guard on top of the cliffs, and you're sailing your dinghy across out to the Isle of Wight. If you get into trouble, ring me up. I'll come out in my helicopter and save you. But meanwhile, I'm only going to tell you when there's a storm coming. So when the budget comes in a couple of weeks' time, we'll let everybody know what the changes are, and then that way everybody can take appropriate action. And so you have to look after the clients, and you have to tell them what they need to do, and then that way they go out, and that element of warmth and explaining them lasts about 5 or 6 years, and then after that they start disappearing off, and you either have to go out and see all the old clients and catch up with them, because everything's done electronically, and once you've seen them the first time, you might never see them again, and after 5 or 6 years the warm feeling they get disappears, and you've got to really go and see them again if you want to keep them, or you just accept that some of the client base will change and more will come in, and you get a lot of, when you get bigger, you get a lot of churn, you get lots of clients leaving and lots of ones coming in, and you try to stop them as much as you can leaving, but it's inevitable some will leave. And when you're small and the client leaves, you tear your hair out and you think, oh, I've lost my first client, what will I do? And you ring them up and you try and keep them, but when you have like 15 clients leaving a month, you think my business is falling apart. It's not really. If 45 are coming in, you've got 30 new ones. So it becomes a bit of, it just becomes something that you end up accepting, really, that you can't keep them all. And people will leave because, I've moved to Southampton and I want somebody locally, or I've retired, or I'm doing this, I'm doing that, or we've been taken over by someone. You just try your best for everybody and hope you get recommended.
Tom, that is awesome. There's some wonderful metaphors and analogies in there. I think I could listen to your stories forever. I think we've picked up on some mistakes. We've picked up on what makes the firm special. We've heard some secrets to your success as well. Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. And I think the thing for me is that you're very honest. You say it like it is. Obviously, have fun in the work that you do. You don't take it actually too seriously. Maybe you did, in the early days, but now you don't. And I think being that relaxed, being confident, and being able to communicate, which you obviously can, really is a massive strength, I think, in this type of business. Everybody talks about advisory and all of that. What it really is talking to people and having that relationship, isn't it? And also being relaxed if somebody leaves. So, yeah.
I was going to say, I was in a meeting with an audit client, and their group finance director came over from Italy, and there's a finance director there, the UK finance director, the UK managing director, and you're talking to the people, and I'm explaining how things work. And at the end of the meeting, the Italian group finance director said, I want to take you back to Italy with me so that you can do our Italian group accounts. I went, well, I don't think I'm licensed and I can't speak Italian. What do you want me for anyway? He went, because you sit here and you talk to us like normal people and you explain how things work and how it'll all be smooth. He goes, I have meetings with the auditors in Italy, and all they do is they shout at me and they're just horrible and it's terrible meetings. I said, well, why do they do that? He goes, well, because they're auditors. I went, I'm an auditor as well. I am the policeman. but I'm the policeman who's walking down the street, and I'll say hello to you and help you cross the road and things like that. However, if you're doing something wrong, I'll pull my truncheon out and I'll say, oi, you can't do that. You better change those accounts, sunshine, or you're going to get in trouble. I said, so I can be the bad cop as well. I said, but there's no point in being the bad cop when you're not doing anything bad. But I'll tell you when you're doing something bad, and I'll tell you to stop. He went, well, that's what I expect you to do. I go, well, there you go. Everybody wants the same thing. So I can be the bad cop, but only be the bad cop when you really, really need to be the bad cop. No, there's no point in being a bad cop.
On that note, Tom, I mean, we really could stay on here for hours and hours, but the 30 minutes is up. But I'm sure there are people who are listening in or who will listen to it at a later date who will want to get in touch with you. So what is their best way of talking to you about, obviously being a potential client, that sort of thing? Where should they go?
Well, I suppose there's Treetops is the name of the firm. It's named after my house because I was working from home, and it was the sign on the gate post, and I was too tight to buy a new brass plate. And so Treetops Accountants is probably only one in the UK. Just Google that, and then I'll pop out, and you've sort of got me really. And for the other accountants who are listening, there's 2 or 3 Facebook sites where I tend to go on and answer a few technical questions when I'm bored. So I'm sure 1 or 2 of them will have seen me in writing, but maybe this is the first time they've heard me and realised they're dealing with a northerner.
Well, funny enough, I recognise your name from 1 or 2 of those Facebook groups as well. So
yeah, I've seen yours on as well. Yeah, mutual respect, sir.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And Philippa, thanks so much for that, Tom. Philippa, how can listeners find out more about you and Insight 101?
Well, you can go on LinkedIn, or you can visit my website, www.insight101.co.uk. And if you're not like Tom, who is a real standout accountant for lots of different reasons, if you feel like you need a little bit of help along the way, that's exactly what I do. So I help and support accountants to create their brand story and their marketing and even find their ideal clients. So if you're looking for some support to really make that stand out, then please get in touch. So Mark, how can listeners find out more about you and your Soul Practice Club?
Well, online everywhere. I'm Bookmark Lee, hence the Bookmark business card. I tend to support accountants who've been running their own practice, feeling isolated, frustrated, maybe even overwhelmed. And they value the support, encouragement, guidance and advice I'm only too pleased to share. I'm always happy to have an initial conversation with no obligation, expectation or pushy sales chat.
Jolly good, that's what we like. Okay, just before we go, our thanks again to the sponsor of this episode, Pinnacle Global Group, your trusted outsourcing partner. Do check out their website and let their CEO Mayank know that you heard about Pinnacle Group on the Accountant Success Secrets podcast. Whew. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share the love online, subscribe and leave a review on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify or YouTube, and let us have your feedback too.
Absolutely. It all helps to potentially broaden the reach of the podcast. And do please contact either Philippa or me if you'd like to be interviewed on a future podcast, or if there's someone you'd like to recommend we interview, just as Lorraine recommended that we interviewed Tom today. So
and rightly so.
Absolutely. My thanks again to Tom and my brilliant co-host Philippa for keeping it all together. The technology did just about last us to the end.
It did.
Sorry for a couple of little blips along the way. But until next time on the Accountant Success Secrets podcast or anywhere else that we might meet online or in real life, bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye for now. And thanks, Tom.
Thanks for